Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who said that the downloading of the COVIDsafe app was crucial to Australia reopening. Now, he also said that 3.5 million Aussies had downloaded the app, but we need about 10 million for it to work.
Joining us now to tell us more about the app and what it means for workplaces is Joydeep Kaur from People and Culture Strategies. Joydeep, thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, thanks for having me.
What can you tell us that we don't already know about the app? A lot of controversy so far about whether it's safe to use, what's happening to our data, whether it should be an obligation because it could help reopen society and get people's lives and livelihoods back on track more quickly. What are the big discussions taking place around the app now?
Yeah, well, without necessarily being an expert on the IT aspects of the app, what we do know is that the government has gone to great lengths to confirm that it is entirely voluntary. It's not mandatory, but what we have seen, including most recently only a couple of hours ago from the Prime Minister, is this very strong push and imploring people to download it. And I think in a press conference earlier in the week, he said that it was the ticket for Australians to have those restrictions lifted a little bit sooner. What is particularly interesting, though, about the app is that what might flow from that for a lot of employers and a lot of organisations is thinking that, well, if the Prime Minister is pushing us so strongly and if it's seen as something that is going to be of so much assistance, well, maybe in our organisations we should be making it mandatory. We should be making it compulsory for our employees to be downloading this particular app. And what a lot of people don't know is that as part of the determination that gave effect to this app, it's been made very clear that employers are actually prohibited from making any kind of rules or requirements that their employees download the app. And I think this is something that some employers might, not be aware of, and even if they're aware of, they might be quite confused by this particular thing, because to them, instinctively, it might seem that, well, it's a logical thing in the interests of safety for my people, my employees and others, that I make it a mandatory requirement that all of my staff download the app. So that's a huge watch out and something that's probably been a little bit lost in the communication, but is very consistent with the government's message around it is entirely voluntary.
So Joydeep, where do you draw the line? Because you know that we often have signs put up around the workplace when it comes to getting your flu shot. We've got, sometimes they bring in nurses to help administer those in a workplace. So is it wrong for an employer to put up a sign encouraging employees to do that, to send out an email alerting people to the availability and what that might mean, for the economy going forward if everybody gets on board?
Absolutely. It's a very tricky one. And what I would suggest to all employers is be delicate and cautious in terms of any communications around it. There's nothing wrong with a leader saying, for example, that he or she has downloaded the app and that he or she at a personal level thinks that it's a good thing for people to be doing. But even with that, it could be seen in some organisations or by some employees that anything beyond that kind of a statement might be seen to somehow be an implied message or a strong direction or urging by that employer or that boss that the employees download the app. And where the determination is actually quite strict is it says, look, not only can you not mandate the downloading of the app, but it's an offence for you to make it a condition of anyone's ongoing employment or making it a condition of doing business with someone, a client or customer or supplier, whatever, that they have to download the app. So it goes over and above just a general you can't mandate it to some quite specific prohibitions as well. And I think the question's a really good one because in many instances, as you say, with flu shots and a number of other things, employers are encouraged to and indeed have obligations in many instances to take all reasonable steps to ensure the health, safety and welfare of all people at their workplace. And that's why I talk about this almost counterintuitive thing about the app, because for a lot of people, it would seem as though that would be exactly one of those steps. It's a step that ensures people's health, safety and welfare. But I think the government has had to really appease the concerns around privacy and data collection and has had to apply that in that workplace context by saying you can't force it.
Joydeep, what would you recommend to any employees who find they are being pressured or expected to download this app, and they have their reasons for not wanting to do so. It can be very difficult to push back against a firmware directive, particularly if your boss or superior feels emotive and strongly about it.
Yeah, it can be. And I think my advice to employees would be, look, it's always best in any workplace relations situation where there might be conflict or potential conflict for everyone to be calm, for people to go to, if there is a human resources department or someone who is there as a grievance officer or a contact officer, and talk about your concerns with them. Sometimes these conversations can be extremely difficult, and with something like this, particularly if you've got a very insistent leader or boss or manager, it is going to be very difficult indeed. But all an employee can do is work with the systems that an organisation has established. There are external avenues that are available, but of course, once you go down that path, it does escalate the conflict significantly.
Joydeep, I'm curious. We are, hearing more and more that we are moving closer to opening up parts of the economy, to relaxing at least these social distancing rules. Well, it's already happening in some cases. Are you starting to field questions from employers when it comes to when they can start expecting employees to come back to work, and what the process is if you still do have some employees who are reticent? Because the reality is this virus is going to be out there in the community for the foreseeable future. There will likely not be a vaccine for 12 to 18 months. Are you having those kinds of conversations, and how should they be handled?
We certainly are having those conversations. And yes, there is a percentage of the population that it doesn't matter how much comfort they receive or are given from the authorities, will still have their own views and perceptions about whether it is safe for them to be travelling, commuting, going to work, etc. Employers are well advised to, by all means, listen to those concerns, try to work with explaining and continuing to give employees that comfort. But at some point, an employer can only do so much. And it might be, as we have advised clients, that in certain instances, if an employee chooses not to, and that is their choice, well, that will need to be dealt with as any other situation where an employee chooses not to come to work without a valid reason for being absent, be that annual leave or personal leave or whatever else. And it's always unpleasant for an employer, as it is for an employee in that situation, to have to go down that path. Once again, open conversations and communications are critical if you can have them. But this is something that is going to present itself probably for several months ahead, as you say.
Well, Joydeep, we will check in again and see how the situation evolves later down the track. But Joydeep Hall from People and Cultural Strategies, thank you so much for spending your time with us this Friday afternoon.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.